Heiliger Shabbos, Heiliger Shabbos, Heiliger Shabbos, na 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 no, ya na 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 no, hey na na no, hey na na no, Heiliger Shabbos, we vai, we vai, we vai, we vai, we vai, we Shabbos kovoide. Shabbos kodesh, Shabbos kodesh, Heiliger Shabbos. Tini na 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 no, tini na 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 no. Hey na 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 boy, na na na, Heiliger Shabbos. Heiliger Shabbos, na 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 na, Heiliger Shabbos.
Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom from Yerushalayim, still basking in the light of yesterday's Lag BaOmer, as we come now to the 34th day of the Omer count that we counted last night. We are now on day 34 today, on the 19th of Iyar of the year 5777, 15th of May 2017. And today we continue with our studies in the book of Job, Sefer Iyov, and in the Holy Mishnah in Tractate Shabbat, chapter 15. Just before we come to that, let me remind you that this week we will not be having classes on Wednesday. I'll be unavailable owing to some medical treatments. And we will, God willing, have classes this coming Thursday at the usual time. And it remains to be seen whether we'll be having classes next Sunday, the reason being that there is a major international conference taking place in Jerusalem of the Commonwealth of Israel, trying to assemble all those different people that are interested in following the emergence and the return of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. A very momentous, the second annual conference now, since last year's conference at the same time of the year. And this coincides on Monday, the 3-day conference, with a visit of the American President Donald Trump to Israel for one day, and this is completely disrupting everything else that is happening in the country. The travel-wise, the country is going to be paralyzed, and we've just been notified that arrangements to get people to the conference on Monday are going to be extremely difficult, so it's not yet clear what exactly the schedule for next week's studies will be. I have been invited to participate fully in this important conference. I will notify you and hopefully able to tell you all about it. So please do take note of updates in the coming week's Azamra weekly schedule and diary, and times will also be notified on azamra.org website on the schedule page. And with that, let us now turn to our studies today in the book of Iyov, Sefer Iyov, the book of Job, starting now at chapter 29. Shalom, today, the 19th day of the month of Iyar of the year 5777, corresponding to the 15th of May of the year 2017. We continue today with our studies in Job chapter 29, which is a continuation of the concluding, most eloquent and most profound discourse of Job, which has been running continuously since after the Ma'aneh, the address of Bildad Hashuchi, after which Job launched into this final lengthy series of discourses, which will only conclude at the end of chapter 31. And in the previous chapter, chapter 28, we had a section that is a parasha by itself, the very beautiful section in praise of wisdom, a series of separate parashas in the written Hebrew Tanakh. And now beginning at 29, we come to a new section of Job's discourse where, with tremendous poignance and eloquence, he will give us a picture of what we have not heard until now, of what he really was, and what were his ways of conduct in the world that led him all the time in his previous discourses to express his innocence. We have not heard the positive side of what he was in his time of glory, and this we shall hear in his own words in the coming chapter 29, where he sighs and yearns over those days of glory that he had, followed in chapter 30 by a terrible depiction of the complete rejection by all those who once honored him. He now suffers in his sickness. And then we shall come in chapter 31 to the final summation of Job's discourse with his most beautiful closing words. So here in chapter 29 of Job, we are really in the heart of his discourse, and we come now to the Hebrew text of Job chapter 29. Beginning now in chapter 29, verse 1, where we see that there is a distinct break in the paragraphing in the printed Koran Bible text between this section and the previous section, indicating this is now a new parasha petucha, an open parasha, meaning that it is somewhat separated from that which went before. In chapter 28, we heard Job's praises of wisdom and fear of God as the only gateway to God. And that was brought to us from the side of wisdom. And now in chapter 29, he will depict in detail how he ran his life according to that wisdom. Chapter 29, verse 1 in the Hebrew text, Vayosef Iyov seis mesholo vayomar. Once again, Vayosef, Joseph, Yosef, he increased seis mesholo, the bearing of his parable, his allegory. Vayomar, and he said. As the commentators note, the reason why the text here says Vayosef, that Joseph, that Iyov, Yosef, why he added now. Our commentators say that he saw that none of the others was any more answering him, as becomes explicit at the beginning of chapter 32, where they're all, the three first companions are all stunned into silence. They have no answer. So Job continues here in his self-defense. Verse 2 in the Hebrew, Mi yitneni chayarche kedem kime Eloah yishmereni. Who would give me to be able to have it? Mi yitneni, who will give to me chayarche kedem, like the moons of old, the months of old. Kime Eloah yishmereni. As I was in the days when Eloah, God, Yishmereni, would guard me. We've seen how Job sees himself as being abandoned to a grim fate without a providence, and he longs for the time of his being guarded. Verse 3, Behilo nero ale roshi, leoro Elech Hoshech. Behilo Nero, with his radiating of his lamp. Hilo is the glow, as in the word halo. Hilo, the radiating gleam of God's candle. Alei Roshi, upon my head. Leoro Elech Hoshech, through the light of God's guiding candle would I be able to go in the darkness. That is to say, in the words of Rashi, no matter what darkness or trouble came into the world, for me there was always light in those good old days. Well, the deeper meaning of this verse is brought by the Talmud, in the Babylonian Talmud tractate Nida, in Daf Lamed Amud Best, the 30th folio page on the B side of the page. And as an introduction to that, let us note that Behilo Nero Ali Roshi, when he radiated his ner, his candle, his lamp upon my head, the ner is the reference to the soul, as we have an explicit verse in Mishlei, Proverbs, Nir Hashem Nishmas Adam. It is a lamp of God, is the soul of man. So this is an allusion to the soul, which is upon his head, and he's wishing he had this in the previous verse, verse 2, who would give me, as in the months of old. So those months of old, the Talmud interprets as being the time of the embryo protected in the womb, when God is shining God's light upon the embryo, as we see in the very beautiful section from the Talmud here, which I shall now read on this verse. Darash Rabbi Samlai. Rabbi Samlai once interpreted Lama lemo havolad doime b'mei imo. To what is the valad, the embryo, like in the womb of his mother? Lepinkas shemekupal umunach yadav al shtei tzeda'av. It's like a folded notebook that's folded up. Munach yadav al shtei tzeda'av. His two hands are resting upon his two temples. Shtei atzilov al shtei alkuboisov. His two elbows are upon his two knees. Ushnei akovov al shnei agvoisov. His two heels are on his two buttocks. V'rosho munach lo ben Barochov, his head is resting upon his knees. Pif sotum, the tabura pasuach, his mouth is closed, it's sealed. But his tabura, the umbilical cord entering into the body, is wide open. V'oicha mimashe imoy oicheles, he eats from what his mother eats. V'shois mimashe imoy shoiso, he drinks from what his mother drinks. V'namoitzi r'i, Shemo Yarog, he does not bring forth any excrement lest he would kill his mother that could be toxic for his mother. Now, as soon as the embryo comes out into the air of this world at the time of birth, Niftach hasosum, that which was previously closed, his mouth is opened up. V'nistam aposuach, the umbilical cord that was open is now closed. If it were not so that his mouth was open, the umbilical cord now closed, he could not stand and survive even for 1 hour. And there in the womb, there's a candle kindled upon his head. He gazes and sees from the end of the universe to the end of the universe. Shenemar, as it is said, the Talmud here quotes the verse, Behilo Nero aliroishi, when his candle, his lamp shone upon my head. V'altisma, don't be surprised at how the embryo in the womb could see from one end of the universe to the other. Shehare odam yoshen kan, v'roeh chalom be'aspamia, for a person can be asleep here and he sees a dream that is occurring in Spain. There are no days that a person is more dwelling in goodness, more than those days in the womb. As in Job's words, who would give me like the moons of old in the days when God would guard me, those 9 moons, the 9 months of the Leda. So which are those days that add up to a total of months and not to a total of years? Here is the Talmud's proof that the verse is indeed talking about a period of time where only months are enumerated and not whole years. You could say these are the months of the pregnancy, during which they teach the embryo all of the entire Torah. As it says in the book of Proverbs, and he instructed me and he said, let your heart cling to my words. Shmor mitzvos v'chiyei, guard my commandments and live. And here in our chapter, Job says, Besod Eloi, in the secret of God, the mystery of prophecy, Ale Oholi, that dwelled upon my tent. But when the embryo goes out into the air of the world, so concludes the Gemara there in Nido, Bo Malach Usatoru al Piv, comes an angel and strikes the embryo on the mouth. He causes him to forget all of the Torah. So that's a very beautiful Gemara there in Nida about the embryo based upon the Midrash, the darshaning of these verses in Iyov. So now continue with the text in Job chapter 29. So we just heard the Gemara interpret these verses 2 and 3, and also the phrase in verse 4, of which we now look at the Hebrew text. Ka'asher oyisi b'yemei chorpi besod Eloah alei oholi. Very poetic Hebrew here. Kasher hoyisi b'mei chorpi besod Eloah alei oholi. Kasher hoyisi, as I was, b'yemei chorpi, in the days of my sharpness. In modern Hebrew, the choref, and in rabbinic Hebrew, refers to the winter sharp time of the year, and here in the context, Yemei Chorpi is the person's sharp years of their full powers in the early youthful days of young adulthood. As I was, would that I could return to those days as I was in the days of my sharp young maturity. Besod Eloah alei oholi. Besod Eloah, the secret of God, the secret of prophecy, as we just mentioned and we saw in the Gemara. Besod Eloah, the secret of God, alei oholi, upon my tent. Be'od Shaddai imodi, svivosai no'oroi. Be'od Shaddai, when still Shaddai, the eternal God, was imodi, with me. We see here the names of God that recurred throughout the main portion of Job. Eloah and Shaddai constantly being counterbalanced, these two aspects of Tiferet and Chesed, and Shaddai Yesod. When they were with him, Imodi Sevivosai No'oroi, around me are my attendants. Berachotz Halichai Bechemo, V'tzur yotzuk imodi palgei shomen. Berachotz halichai bechemo, with the washing of my very footsteps with chemo, with butter, soft butter. V'tzur yotzuk imodi palgei shomen. V'tzur, the rock, yotzuk would pour out imodi, with me, palgei shomen, streams of oil. So these are parts of the mashal that Job has offered, as it says in verse 1, Vayosef Iyov se'es misholo. Job continues bearing his mashal, his parable. So these metaphors of the washing of his very footsteps with butter and the pouring out of the streams of oil are all allusions to his affluent, luxurious glory and success. Verse 6, B'tzeisi shar alei kores, b'rochov ochin moshovi. B'tzeisi shar, when I would go out to the gate of the city, alei kores. The kores is a part of the city that has hewn wooden beams, which are a place for the elders of the city to sit in the gate of the city, where the people would gather for counsel and judgment. But a hov, in the wide communal area, this wide street, ochin moshovi, I prepare my sitting place to sit in judgment. So we had earlier how God is in the tent of Job, in the secret of prophecy, and now through this prophetic spirit, Job would go out to the city as the prophet and judge and leader of the people. Verse 8, Ra'uni na'orim v'nechbou v'yishishim komu amadu. Ra'uni na'orim, the lads would see me. V'nechbou, They would hide themselves away out of shame and awe. V'yishishim, the elders, Komu omodu, they stood, they rose, they stood before me. Sorim otzru v'milim, v'chaf yosimu lefihem. Sorim, the princes, the leaders, otzru v'milim, they stopped, they ceased, they paused, v'milim, with words. V'chaf yosimu lefihem, chaf, their hand, they would put, yosimu, they would put their hand lefihem, to their mouth. Kol negidim nechbo, u'leshonom lachikom doveko. Kol negidim, the voice of the negidim, the prominent leaders of the leading levels of the society of the city, nechbo, they would be hidden away. Again, the same word as of the youths. Even these negidim, prominent people, would hide away. L'shonom lechikom doveko, their tongue, lechikom, to their very palate, doveko, would cling. They were left speechless before the wisdom of Job, as he now continues to elaborate. Ki ozen shom'o vata ashreni. Va'ayin roaso vata ideni. Ki ozen shom'o, for the ear heard what I, Job, had to say. Vata ashreni, that ear would judge me happy and fortunate and glorious. Va'ayin ro'aso, an eye saw, the eyes of the people. Vata ideni, and testified in my favor, they acknowledged. And here now Job explains why. Ki amalit oni meshaveya v'yotham lo oizer lo. Ki amalit, for I would save, rescue the oni, meshaveya, the poor man that is crying out. V'yosom, the orphan, v'lo ozer lo, with none to help him. Job now shows that he was the very exemplar of the seventh of the seven Noahide laws, which is to institute justice and conduct oneself with justice in one's society. All of these are commandments of the Torah, and the laws of justice in society are clearly commanded to all of the nations. So here Job, with his own eloquent testimony to what he was in his time of true greatness, Birkas oved olai tovo, v'leiv almono arnin. Birkas oved, the blessing of the oved, the person that was lost, perhaps even perished. Olai tovo, his blessing would come upon me, because the person that was lost had nobody to hope would protect that person's orphans, but Job was the one that would protect them. And therefore the blessing of the person that was lost would come upon Job for being willing to protect their orphans. V'leiv almono, the heart of the widow, arnin, I shall make exult with joy because of Job's protection of the orphans and the widows. In the very beautiful interpretation of the rabbis, which is in the Talmud Baba Basra Tesizayin, tractate Baba Basra, which is the sugya about Job in the Talmud, which gives all the different drashot about these verses. There it says, Shehoyo Goizel Sodi Yisomim, that Job would actually go and steal the field of the orphans. Umashbicho umachzir lohem, he would work on improving the field, and after he'd done all the excellent improvements, he would return the field to them. And the Talmud says there in the same place of the widows that Lev Almono Arnina would make the heart of the widow rejoice. Shahiyo Matil Shmui al Almonois, he would put his name on the widows and say, yes, she's from my family. Lemor Kravosihi, yes, she's my relative. Oyani Asiano, I shall marry her. Kadesha Yikvetsoleh Toivim, so that many hands of suitors would jump towards her to want to marry her. These righteous ways of Job, now verse 14. Tzedek Lovashti Vayilbosheni Kimeil Betzonif Mishpoti. Very beautiful words. Lech tzedek lovashti. Righteousness did I clothe myself with. Vayilbosheni, and it would garb me. I donned upon myself the righteousness, and then righteousness clothed me. Kimeil v'tzonif mishpoti, like a coat and like a belt wound around, or would be my mishpat, my justice. Says Rashi, commenting on this verse, I pursued justice and righteousness, and it was found with me, just like a coat and a belt or a turban, which are the beautiful ornaments of a person. So was my justice that I dealt with people, dealt out to people, beautiful and pure. So the very idea that one could clothe oneself in justice is actually of profound mystical significance, because when a person acts in a certain way, that action becomes a garment of the person's soul. And it's those garments of their actions which are stored up in God's memory, those garments which await them to garb themselves in the time of the judgment and in the time of the reward in the life after life. That is to say that any deed that a person does, good or bad, is a garment. If it's a bad deed, it's a soiled garment. If it's a good deed, it's a pure, good garment. And all these are laid up for the judgment. And finally, the soul is purified and is garbed in the good deeds that the person performed in this life. And this was the path of Job in this manner. Continuing now in his righteous pathways in verse 15. Einayim hoyisi la'iver v'raglayim lapiseach oni. Einayim hoyisi, eyes was I was the eyes la'iver, to the blind. V'raglayim, and legs, lapisech, to the lame. Oni, I served for them as this, taking care of those who are limited by their lack of vision or their inability to walk, both literally and figuratively. Ov onochi lo evyonim, v'riv lo yodati ech kereho. Ov onochi lo evyonim, a father am I to the needy. V'riv lo yodati, if there was some quarrel that I did not know, I was not aware of what it really was about, and why is one striving against the other. Echkerehu, I would investigate it. I would not leave it to my surface impressions to jump to a conclusion. I would perform a full investigation according to the norms of judicial investigation. Fearlessly, verse 17. V'ashabro mesal ois avol u'mishinov ashlich toref. V'ashabro, I would break mesal ois avol, the the grinding teeth of the avol, of the wicked, corrupt person. U'mishinov ashlich toref, from his very teeth of this assertive wicked person, I would cast down the prey from him, pull it away from him. Job breaking the teeth of the wicked and pulling away from them their prey, truly encountering, draining the swamp and attacking the corrupt deep state in the face, in the name of true justice. So after all this career of justice, Job believed that would last forever. This is the poignancy of Job now in his present state, because at that time, in verse 18, V'omar im kini egvo v'chachol arbe yomim. V'omar, I said at that time, im kini egvo, surely this will last with my nest. Shall I expire, everything in its right place as it was back then? V'chachol arbe yomim, literally like the sand, shall I multiply days. Rashi's interpretation on this verse is as follows. It says, V'oima im kini egvar, b'shvil kosher midosai o yisi oime belibi, because of the purity of my traits, I used to say in my heart, when I die, my very nest and my house will all be firmly established with me. Kachol arba yomim, here Rashi brings midrash. There is a bird whose name is called Chol, the Chol bird. And this bird did not suffer the penalty at the time of the curse for the eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, when with Adam and Eve all of the creatures were also cursed. But because this bird, the whole bird, never tasted from the tree, it was not fined with the penalty of death. And at the end of every 1,000 years, the whole bird renews itself and goes back to its fresh youth. That is a Gemara in Tractate Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Ches Amud Bes. I said I would multiply days like the whole bird, thousands of years in this state of prestige and success. He continues with what he thought at the time. Verse 19: Shoroshi pasuach elemoim. V'tal yolin b'kitziri. Shorshi, my root, I thought, pasuach elimoim, is open to the waters. V'tal, the dew, yolin b'kitziri, shall rest upon my harvest. Kavodi hodosh imodi, v'kashti b'yodi sahalif. Kavodi, my glory, my soul, chodash, is new, renewed, imari, with me. V'kashti b'yodi sahalif, kashti, my bow, my strength, my endurance. B'yodi sahalif, it shall be exchanged in my hand as if it will be renewed. Now continuing to evoke his stature among the people, verse 21, Li shama'u v'yichelu v'yiddemu lemor atzosi. Li shama'u, to me did they listen. V'yichelu, they awaited, were waiting and hoping to hear my words. V'yiddemu, they would be silenced. Lemor atzosi, in face of my counsel. Achari devori lo yishanu, ve'olemo titof milosi. Achari devori, after my word in the council of the sages, lo yishnu, they shall not say anything a second time. Ve'olemo, upon them, titof Milosi, there shall flow my word. The word titof, from the Hebrew root nataf, would be to flow, and his words of sweet counsel would flow upon the people. And Rashi also brings out the connotation of prophecy in this word, as we find in a number of sources. Rashi brings the prophet Amos, chapter 7, verse 15, where the false prophet says to Amos, Al tatif al bet Yitzchak, do not prophesy to the house of Isaac. That is to say that here, in using this word, Job is alluding to how his very counsel to the people were seen like prophecy. Vayahalu chamotor li, ufihem po'aru lemalkosh. Vayichalu, they hoped, kamoto, as one would hope for rain, li, for me they were hoping for my words of counsel and guidance. Ufihem, and their mouth, po'aru lemalkosh, they opened their very mouths wide for the malkosh, for the latter rains. In other words, here Job is metaphorically comparing his wisdom and counsel to the nutritious and fertilizing waters of the rains, the former rains and the latter rains. Since we are now in the month of Iyar, one might mention, in association with the latter part of this verse, Upihem po'arula malkosh, they open up their mouths to the malkosh. The malkosh refers to the latter rains, which in Israel come in the late rainy season, at the very latest during the month of Nisan, and sometimes there are rains in the month of Iyar also. And we have a tradition that anywhere in the world during the month of Iyar, one should, if there are rains in the month of Iyar, drinking those waters by going out where it's raining and opens one's mouth to the rain, that is a segula, a propitious, a beneficial remedy propitious for healing. And the proof text would be here, ufihem po'aru, they would open their mouths wide, lemalkosh, for the latter rains. Eshak alehem lo ya'aminu, v'or ponai lo yapilun. Eshak alehem, if Job, in that time of grave prestige as leader and counselor, if he would laugh at them, he would let a smile cross his face, Eshak alehem lo ya'aminu, they wouldn't believe it. V'or ponai lo yapilun, the light of my face they would not cast down, they would not look down upon me. Evhar darkom ve'eshev rosh ve'eshkon kamelech bagdud kasher avelim yenachem. Evchar darkom ve'eshev rosh. Evchar darkom, I would choose their ways for them. I would teach them and guide them and instruct them what they must do. Ve'eshev rosh, I would sit there as the head. Ve'eshkon kamelech bagdud, concluding words of this section of Job's discourse, the summation of his days of glory. Ve'eshkon, I would dwell, kamelech bagdud, like a king before his legion. Kasher avelim yenachem, as when the king avelim would, mourners yenachem, would he comfort. Just as a king might comfort mourners, the king, surrounded by his legions in a state of majesty, glory, and serenity, would bring down his light to shine upon the mourners, because all those of the common people short of Job would seem like being in a state of mourning away from the ways of prophecy, and Job was like a king comforting them. And then the opening word of chapter 30, the immediate contrast, V'ato sohaku olai tzeirim. Mimeni leyomim asher mo'asti avoisom loshis im kalvei tzoini. Here now, Job, in the very next section in the Hebrew, there is no, in the written text about Tanakh, there is no break of any parasha between the end of chapter 29 and the opening of verse 30. Va'ato now, says Job, in his tragic, appalling suffering, sochaku olai tzeirim, the young laughed at me. Mimeni, from me, leyomim asher mo'asti avoisom, those that days ago I would despise their fathers, they are now laughing at me. Those whose fathers I despise them, loshis im kalbei tzoini, not even to put them with the dogs of my flocks. And that launches into chapter 30, which will be reserved for our next study session with the help of God, where Job contrasts then his appalling situation now after all of his physical suffering, the loss of his home, his children, his wealth, and everything. And he will poignantly in chapter 30 depict his present state before reaching the climax of his discourses in chapter 31. So with that, my friends, we now conclude our studies of Iyov for today, and we shall come presently after a short interval to our study today of the Holy Mishnah. Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom, and back again now to the next section of our studies today, turning to the Holy Mishnah in the new chapter 15 of Masachet Shabbat, Tractate Shabbat. Shalom, today, the 19th day of the month of Iyar of the year 5777, corresponding to the 15th of May of the year 2017. And we continue today with our studies in Tractate Shabbat, Masachet Shabbat, in chapter 15, from the beginning of the chapter, now turning to a new labor, one of the 39 labors listed in chapter 7 of our Mishnah, one of the 39 labors that is listed as being forbidden on the Shabbat. And today our Mishnah begins to speak about the labor of tying knots. And I certainly remember from my childhood days in the Boy Scouts movement that there was a considerable art of tying knots, which after one left the Boy Scouts, one pretty much forgot about. But there is certainly a difference between making a reef knot and making what is called a granny's knot. A reef knot will hold, whereas a granny's knot is likely to come undone. And there are many kinds of professional knots that are known to, for example, sailors who may need to tie their boats to the shore and so on, to camel drivers who may need to tie up their beasts. And these various kinds of knots are professional knots that are tied to last. And the paradigm case of making a knot on Shabbat in the Mishkan, in the sanctuary, was one of two likely reasons. One was that the sanctuary had its yiriot, the drapes which made the ceiling over the sanctuary, and there was the parochet, the embroidered screen between the holy section of the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies, and all of these fabrics, in the weaving of them or the making of them, it was necessary at times to tie two threads together to continue the weaving process smoothly. And likewise, in the case of procuring the blue dye, the techelet dye for the blue threads in the sanctuary and in the in the garments of the high priest, it was necessary to trap the particular kind of snail known as the chilazon snail, and these snails were trapped with nets which had to be knotted. And as with various other labors which we have encountered, for example, writing letters has a paired labor, which is the erasing of letters for a positive purpose. And likewise, the labor of tying a knot has the paired labor of untying a knot, which is also forbidden on the Shabbat if it is a professional knot that was made to last. But if it is not a professional knot, and if it is not also getting knotted up with our terminology here, if the knot in question is not professional and the knot was not tied in order to endure, then there is no liability for either tying or untying such a non-professional temporary knot. And in some cases, for putting on one's clothes where necessary, as we shall see in our Mishnah, it is permitted from the outset to tie a temporary knot, a bow, to tie your shoes, and so on. So with that, let us go in now to the text of Masachet Shabbat, Tractate Shabbat, chapter 15, the first Mishnah. Elu kishorim shechayovin alehen. The following are the kinds of knots that there would be a liability if somebody over these knots tied them on the Shabbat. Kesher agamulin, the knot of the camels, the nose of the camel would be pierced and a rope would be pulled through it and knotted with a professional knot that would not come undone, so that another rope could be attached to the loop made by the first knot. Another rope could be attached to it to actually pull the camel along, as we shall see later on. So the Kesher Gemolin was the professional knot to keep the loop firmly on the camel's nose for all of the rest of its life. So that would be a professional knot that was there to last. Likewise, the Kesher Asaponin, the knot of the sailors, who would tie a knot on the boat that would be also forming a loop. The knot was a professional knot tied to last, so that when it came to tie the boat to the shore, there would be already something on which the rope tying the boat to the shore could be securely fastened to the boat because of this loop formed with the Kesher Hasaponim, the knot of the sailors. So these two, if a person were to knot these two, there would be on Shabbat, there would be a liability of a sin offering. Or Kishem Shu Chayov al Kishuron, continues our Mishnah, Kishem Shu Chayov al Kishuron, just like he would be liable over the tying of such knots. Kochu Chayov al Eteron, so he would be liable if he undid such knots, if he released these professional permanent knots. Rabbi Meir Omer, כל קשר שהוא יכול להתירוי באחס מיודov, אין חייבן עולov. Rabbi Meir tells us that any knot that a person would be able to undo with just one hand, that would not come into the category of professional permanent knot that would carry with it a liability of a sin offering if it was undone on the Shabbat or even knotted on the Shabbat. If we undone with one hand, that does not constitute, in the opinion of Rabbi Meir, a permanent knot. However, his definition is not accepted as our sages. The majority opinion is the one that accepted as the halacha, the opinion that the definition of the knot is these particular professional knots and all those that are like them. So continuing now with the second Mishnah. יש לחוק שורים שאין חייבן עליהן כקשר הגמולין וכקשר הספונין. You do have knots where there is no liability of a sacrifice if these were tied on the Shabbat or untied on the Shabbat unwittingly. They do not have the same liability as Kekesher Hagamolin or Kekesher Zaponim, like the knot of the camel drivers or the knot of the sailors that we just heard about. Now, our Mishnah here does not specify exactly what these knots are. The Mishnah is going in its second part to tell us about the knots that you're allowed to tie on Shabbat without any questions. The first part of the Mishnah is interpreted by the Talmud to be referring to certain knots that do not qualify for carrying the penalty of a sin offering if tied unwittingly on the Shabbat. One example given in the Talmud would be if somebody ties to the loop formed around the camel's nose, which is forbidden to tie on Shabbat, if they were to tie the other rope from that loop to the feeding trough of the camel, for example, that would not constitute a liability. It's not supposed to do that on the Shabbat, but it's not constitute a chiyuv chatos, a liability of a sin offering. And likewise, the rope that will be tied to the loop formed in front of the ship, the rope that will be tying that loop, securing it to the port or to the shore, the knot used to tie that rope is not considered to, the knot tying that rope is not considered to come in the category of the kind of permanent professional knot. The reason in both cases being, that these ropes securing the ship or securing the camel are not tied there permanently. The knot around the camel's mouth nose is tied permanently. Likewise, the knot at the front of the ship is tied permanently and professionally, but not those knots securing them to something else. And now the Mishnah continues telling us which knots may be tied on the Shabbat from the very outset. Kosheres isho maftech chaluko. A woman may tie the key of her blouse. That is to say that if the woman's blouse has cords of some kind or straps where, for example, the left side of the chaluk, the blouse, can be tied to the right-hand shoulder and the right side of the haluk can be tied to the left-hand shoulder, the Mishnah tells us that the woman is allowed to tie these knots. You might have thought that since a woman could presumably, if necessary, put the shirt, the blouse on and off, if one of the straps only was tied but the other was loose, you might have thought that, that constitutes a permanent knot, so we will not let her tie that knot on the Shabbat, even though sometimes she may leave one side knotted all the time. Nevertheless, since this is an article of clothing that she puts on and takes off, these are not considered to be permanent knots, and she's allowed to do it. Likewise, chute v'chute sevocho v'shel psikio retzus minol v'sandal. Likewise, one may tie chute sevocha, the woman, the threads or the bands of her sevocho. The sevocho is a kind of netting that she would tie around her head. The psikio is a belt that might be for a male or a female, which would be where coming around the waist, the two ends of it will be tied together with threads. That is permitted to tie. Likewise, retzus minol v'sandal, the straps of a shoe or a sandal may be tied in a bow on the Shabbat. That is again something that is not tied permanently nor professionally. And likewise continues the Mishnah, v'noidois yain v'shemen, flagons of wine or oil. These would be leather flagons where the openings of the leather flagon will be tied up to secure them so that the liquids don't flow out. There again, the knot is being tied only temporarily, and likewise, kedero shel basar, if there is a pot of meat, sometimes a person might, the cook, the housewife, might tie over the pot a cloth covering, and the knot used to tie that is considered to be permitted on the Shabbat if it was to maintain the heat in the pot of whatever reason. And even if the pot had a spout, you could still tie that knot because, again, it is not considered to be a permanent knot. So now continuing with the second Mishnah, further opinions about the knots that may be tied on the Shabbat. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Jacob, said, Koshrin lifnei habehemo bishvil shelo teitzei. One may tie a knot in front of an animal so that she will not be able to get out. If you need to keep the animal in its a pen or the field or wherever the animal is located, such a knot may be tied, because again, that is not going to be a permanent knot. You will not forever after be tied up to that place. Koshrin deli befasikyo. one will be able to tie a bucket with a pesikyo. This is the belt that we just heard about in the earlier part of the Mishnah, the belt that a person might want to tie to their bucket if they didn't have the rope available and they need to lower the bucket down into the well to draw some water. So if they were using the pesikyo belt, according to this Tana, they will be allowed to tie that knot on the Shabbat. The reason being that, again, the person's belt is not something they're going to leave tied to the bucket. They just did it in the emergency to be able to draw water from the belt in the absence of the usual rope. So for that reason, they could tie that because they won't leave the belt there. Avoloi bachevel. But they can't tie the bucket with a rope because the rope will be left there. They're likely to tie such a knot permanently. Rabbi Yehuda Matir. Rabbi Judah is of the opinion that one may tie certain kinds of ropes to the bucket, but the majority opinion is that one may not, because if it's a rope, the person is liable to leave it there after the Shabbat, so it would enter the category of a permanent knot. Klal Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Now Rabbi Judah gives a generalization. Kol kesher she'enoi shel kayomo. Every knot that is not going to be enduring, ein chayovin olov. One would not be liable to a sin offering if one tied such a knot or untied it on the Shabbat for a constructive purpose. One would not be liable for a sin offering if that was done unwittingly. What would be a constructive purpose for untying a knot? The commentators tell us that when they made the nets for the chilazon snail, sometimes it was necessary to release the threads making up the meshing, either to tighten the mesh or to loosen the mesh. So therefore, the untying of a knot might well constitute a positive malacha if it was done for a positive purpose. Well, now we've been talking about how a woman may knot her garments together. She can make a knot and a bow on the Shabbat. You can knot your belt and your shoes. So in the way that our Mishnah is woven together through affinity of subject matter, we now come to a different prohibition of the Shabbat. And this is the prohibition of actually whether you may or you may not fold up your clothes on the Shabbat. Why would one be forbidden to fold up their clothes on Shabbat? We shall presently see the issues that are involved. The point is that folding a garment, depending on how new or old the garment is, what its condition is, what its color is, folding can sometimes be a way of renewing and preserving the garment in its pristine beauty. There's a particular kind of folding that is we call pleating, which is quite an involved act. And that is certainly forbidden on the Shabbat. We shall learn in our Mishnah under what circumstances one may carefully fold one's clothes. You may, when you take off a garment, as you take it off, you can slip it over a clothes hanger, and you may also slip it over a chair or a clothes rack of some kind. But on the Shabbat, except in the circumstances discussed in this Mishnah, one does not carefully fold one's garments. If it's for use on the same Shabbat, we shall see one may, under certain circumstances, do so. But if it's folding the garment after its use on the Shabbat for putting it away to protect it until later use after the Shabbat, that is forbidden. So let's now go into our Mishnah, Mishnah Gimel, the third Mishnah. Mekaplin es ha-kelim. One may fold up kelim. The Hebrew word keli, which we usually translate as a vessel, is also a containing vessel for our bodies, namely our garments. And the Hebrew word keli in the Mishnah and also in the Kabbalah may often refer to clothes as opposed to the kinds of things we normally associate with utensils, jars, cups, plates, and so on. One may fold one's clothes even 4 or 5 times if that were necessary on the Shabbat. You may spread out the beds, make the bed with the sheets and the covers. If it is milele Shabbos l'Shabbos, if you're making the bed again after it was slept in on Shabbat night, Friday night, and you know that the bed is going to be used on the Shabbat day, just as many people do have the Shabbat afternoon rest, so you may arrange the bedding on the bed for the same day, aval loy mi Shabbos l'moitzoi Shabbos, but not if the use of the bed was finished on the Shabbat day. After one's afternoon rest, one is not going to use the bed again until Saturday night after the exit of the Shabbat. One may not make the bed on the Shabbat for use on the departure of the Shabbat. This is consonant with an essential principle about the Shabbat, which is brought out in Book of Exodus in the portion of the manna, where the people were told to prepare their manna, the double portion they received on the Friday, prepare for the Shabbat day. And from here we learn that one prepares things from the weekday to Shabbat, but one does not prepare anything on Shabbat for use on a weekday, because that would be a smear and a blemish on the holiness of the Shabbat, to start using one's time on the Shabbat to prepare things for the weekday. So here this is fits with that principle that one does not make one's bed on Saturday afternoon preparing for Saturday night. Well, now, to get back into more detail to the subject of the clothing, let us go into the definitions given by Rav Ovadia Mibartanura in his commentary based upon the guidelines discussed in the Talmud. Begorim sheposhton mekaplon, and when you take off your clothes, one may fold them, afilu arba chemisha pa'amim, even 4 or 5 times, kedei lachazor ulelovsham boi bayom, in order to go back to wear them again on the same day, to have them ready for the same day of Shabbat. V'lo shonu elo ba'odam echod. They taught this teaching about being allowed to fold only in the case of one person. 2 people cannot cooperatively fold a garment on Shabbat. That is considered to be a professional cleaners and activity when it's done together. So one person may do it. With 2 people, no. They look too much like performing a repair on this garment. When it's one person that we just said he may do it, that's only if it is new clothes, brand new clothes. Shehem koshim ve'enon memaharim likmot, because they are stiff and they don't quickly get crumpled. In other words, since in a new garment the folds will still be discernible, and this for men who wear the talit of the Shabbat, the question of folding the talit after its use in the prayer services on the Shabbat, from this Mishnah we are learning that you may not fold your garment back unless it is a new white garment, as we shall see. So the talit comes into this category. When it's old garments, folding them neatly is much more of a repair, a tikkun, a refinement and rectification of the garment for use. It looks like fixing a garment or a human utensil on the Shabbat, which is forbidden. And now a further qualification, where even with new garments we also did not say this, elo belavanim, except if they are white. Avol tzvuim loi. But if it is, if they are colored, then no. She'atzvuim kipulon mesakdon biyoser. For the colored garments, when folding them neatly, this is particularly effective repair for the good looks of the garment. And a further qualification, uvelavonim namilo amaran, even with white garments, they didn't say, unless he has no other garments to change into. But if the person had other garments to change into for the honor of the Shabbat, then he may not fold his existing garments. So in the case of a man that has a brand new white talit, if he wore it on Friday night, as some people do on Friday night for the evening services, he may fold it back in its original folds if he does it alone, if he's going to use it on Shabbat morning for the morning prayers. However, once he took off the garment, the talit on the Shabbat in the day, and he's not going to put it again on the Shabbat, then he may not fold it in its original folds. It is customary to fold the talit in a different way of folding from its original folds. So the bottom line here is that one may only really fold one's garments if one has nothing else to wear for the rest of the Shabbat, and it's the only way to protect them. They are new, they are white, they are not colored, and one does it by oneself. And with that, we now proceed to the conclusion of the third Mishnah, the concluding sections. Having introduced the prohibition of folding something on the Shabbat for a weekday, Rabbi Shmuel goes further. Rabbi Shmuel, oimer makaplin es hakelim umatzin es hamitois miyom kippurim l'Shabbos. Rabbi Shmuel says, makaplin es hakelim, you could fold your garments in the above manner. Umatzin es hamitois, you could also make your beds miyom kippurim, from the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, if it fell on Friday, the Shabbos, in preparation for the Shabbat that follows. In our time, it is not possible, according to the calendar that has been universally accepted by Torah-observant Jews, it is not possible, according to this rabbinically ordained calendar, for Yom Kippur ever to fall on Friday. But in the temple times, when the new moon of Tishrei was declared sanctified by a rabbinical court that had witnesses who saw the new moon, it could happen that Yom Kippur would fall on Thursday night and Friday. And in such circumstances, Rabbi Shmuel was living at the time when the moon was still sanctified by witnesses, and therefore this could have happened. He says that although one may not prepare from the Shabbat to a weekday, the sanctity of the Day of Atonement is so close to that of the Shabbat, they're so interconnected, that if Yom Kippur were to fall on Friday, one could fold one's clothes ready for the Shabbat and make the beds. And now going into a temple law, v'chilvei Shabbos kerevin b'yom kippurim. Chilvei Shabbos, the fats of Shabbat, that is to say, the fats of animal sacrifices that were offered in the temple on Shabbat, the permitted animal sacrifices, the communal sacrifices, if the fats had not been burned by the end of the Shabbat day, and the following day was Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, which again cannot happen according to our calendar, but could happen in the times of the Mishnah sages when the month was sanctified by witnesses. So sacrificial fats had not fully been burned on the Shabbat, Kerevin, they could be offered B'Yom Kippurim, on Day of Atonement that immediately follows. In other words, on Saturday night, after the exit of the Shabbat, when it's now Yom Kippur, according to that year with that new moon of Tishrei, the sanctity of Yom Kippur is outweighed by the sanctity of the Shabbat, according to Rabbi Shmuel, that the temple offerings of Shabbat could be offered on Yom Kippur. However, Rabbi Akiva dissents from Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva Omer lo shel Shabbos krevin b'Yom Kippurim. The sacrifices of Shabbat may not be offered on Yom Kippur. If Shabbat was, if Yom Kippur fell on Sunday, the sacrifice of Shabbat may not be put on the altar on Saturday night if it's Yom Kippur. V'lo shel Yom Kippurim krevin b'Shabbos, nor may the sacrifices of Yom Kippur, if they were left over to be burned, if Yom Kippur was on Friday, they may not be burned on the Shabbat. There is, according to Rabbi Akiva, according to his darshaning of the appropriate verses in the Chumash, there is an intrinsic difference between the holiness of Yom Kippur and that of Shabbat, and neither one outweighs that of the other. So, with that, we conclude Mishnah Shabbat, chapter 15. And with that, my dear friends, we do now conclude our studies today. And as I announced at the outset, we shall be having classes this week only on Thursday with the help of God, as I will not be available to teach on this coming Wednesday. And the schedule next week is subject to final determination, and notifications will go out about that with next week's Azamra weekly schedule. So, my dear friends, I would like to wish you Yom Tov Morach, a good and a blessed day, and have health and strength in the coming days to take the great light of Lag BaOmer out into the remaining days of the holy Omer count. So we'll have Kabbalat Torah b'Shleimut, a complete and wholehearted receiving of the Torah on the festival of Shavuot on the night of May 30th and May 31st. Shalom from Jerusalem.
Asada elisidusu betafru de Shabbatu ve'azmin bohashtu Tiku Kadishu Nehoira Yishraivo Bekidishu Rabu Ivchamru Tu Devatech Dayenafshu Yishadai Shifrai benechzai vikurai v'yach zaylon sisrai disamar b'lchi Yishu yigalai lovuntam ayid v'israi sanahamai the inen aus bishmai kefi